in the city's pristine upper echelon. CEO Veronica Hayes lived in a fortress of success. Her Christmas Eves, a tableau of polished silence. Next door, Lucas Bennett, a single father with calloused hands and a daughter clutching a humble, newspaper-wrapped gift, hesitantly knocked. Veronica, a woman who had perfected the art of isolation, nearly dismissed them, but the child's sincere smile and Lucas's quiet dignity prized open a crack in her carefully constructed world. That single knock would unravel 2 decades of lies, expose her hidden vulnerability, and set her on a collision course with forces determined to keep her cold and alone. The December wind rattled the windows of Veronica Hayes's house, a sprawling testament to her command of both finance and design. But inside, everything remained perfectly still. She sat at her dining table, a gleaming expanse of polished mahogany that could comfortably seat 12, yet had only ever held 1 on this particular night. Her fingers were wrapped around a crystal glass filled with a fine red wine she barely tasted, the deep ruby liquid a stark contrast to the glacial calm of her surroundings. Through the tall bay windows, Veronica could observe the entire neighborhood transforming into a festive panorama. Houses draped in twinkling lights, families gathered on porches, their laughter carried faintly on the crisp air, and children running through yards dusted with fresh snow. Veronica herself had stopped decorating years ago, her home reflecting perfectly what she had become efficient, beautiful in its coldness, and utterly empty. Not since the tragic accident that had taken her parents when she was just 16 had Veronica allowed herself to hope for more than the tangible, the controllable. She had built Hayes Industries from nothing, a towering testament to her will, becoming the youngest woman to lead a Fortune 500 company by the age of 35, and tripling its immense value by the time she reached 40. Now, at 43, she sat alone on Christmas Eve, surrounded by every material success she had achieved, yet feeling nothing but the profound, unyielding cold of her own solitude. The knock came at precisely 8:17 in the evening. No one ever visited Veronica unannounced. Her calendar was a carefully curated document, her privacy a sacred, unbreachable wall. She considered ignoring it, allowing the gentle tapping to fade into the background hum of her perfectly controlled environment. But something about its unexpected gentleness, its almost apologetic cadence, pulled her from her chair, drawing her towards the heavy oak front door. When she opened the door, a rush of cold air swept in, carrying with it the invigorating scent of fresh snow and a faint hint of cinnamon from somewhere in the neighborhood. A man stood on her porch, his frame broad but not imposing. Behind him, a little girl peeked out, her wide eyes filled with an unself-conscious curiosity. The man's jacket was worn at the elbows, the fabric softened by countless washes, and his hands, visible as he gestured, were rough and calloused. Speaking of physical labor, the girl, no more than 7 years old, wore a coat that was clearly too big for her small frame, its sleeves rolled up several times. She clutched a small wooden box, wrapped haphazardly in newspaper and tied with a red ribbon that had clearly been used before, its edges a little frayed. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man said, his voice carrying a soft, warm southern accent that was utterly out of place in this pristine, polished neighborhood. "We live next door, in the Blue House. My daughter Rosie wanted to share Christmas with the neighborhood." He glanced down at the child, whose face broke into a gap-toothed smile, a burst of unfiltered joy. "We made some things, and we wanted you to have one." Veronica's first, almost automatic instinct was to firmly say no, to politely but decisively close the door on this unexpected intrusion. But the little girl, Rosie, stepped forward, holding up the humble, newspaper-wrapped box with both hands. Veronica found herself looking directly into Rosie's eyes that held no judgment, no expectation, just the simple, pure desire to give. "Daddy says everyone should have something nice on Christmas, even if they're by themselves," Rosie said, her voice a small, clear chime in the cold night air. The words landed in Veronica's chest like a smooth, heavy stone dropped into still water. Even if they're by themselves, was it that obvious? Then was her profound, carefully hidden loneliness so transparent that even a child could perceive it? "That's very kind," Veronica heard herself say, the words feeling alien on her tongue, rusty from disuse in such personal contexts. She took the box, surprised by its unexpected, solid weight. "Thank you, Daddy made it," Rosie announced proudly, her chest puffing out slightly. "He makes lots of things." The man, Lucas, flushed slightly, a touch of embarrassment coloring his cheeks. "It's nothing fancy, just something I do in my spare time." He met Veronica's gaze briefly, and in that fleeting connection, Veronica saw a recognition not of her vast business success, not of her public persona, but of her deep, private loneliness. "Merry Christmas," Lucas said quietly, his voice gentle. She should have closed the door then, returned to her solitary, controlled world. But instead, she found herself calling out, the words surprising even herself. "Wait, I didn't catch your name." "Lucas," the man replied, turning back, his hand still gently resting on Rosie's shoulder. "Lucas Bennett. And this is Rosie, Veronica Hayes," she responded, a moment's hesitation lingering before she completed the introduction. "Would you like to come in? It's cold out here." Lucas glanced at his daughter, then back at Veronica, his expression thoughtful as he weighed the unexpected invitation. "We don't want to intrude." "You're not," Veronica heard herself say, and as the words left her lips, she realized, with a surprising clarity, that it was true. This was not an intrusion. It was something else entirely. "Please," she added, a note of genuine desire entering her voice. "I have hot chocolate." Lucas nodded, a soft smile finally gracing his lips. And Rosie, with the boundless energy of a child, bounded up the steps, her worn coat flapping around her. Veronica led them into her kitchen, a marvel of white marble and gleaming stainless steel, a space designed for efficiency and aesthetics rather than warmth or shared meals. She heated milk, found the cocoa powder in a distant pantry, and soon they were settled at the vast kitchen island. The steaming mugs a small oasis of comfort in the otherwise austere room. "How long have you lived next door?" Veronica asked, trying to keep her voice light. "Neutral. About 8 months, Lucas said, blowing gently on his mug. "We moved here from Georgia, needed a fresh start after my wife passed away 2 years ago." There was a careful neutrality in his voice, a practiced distance that suggested a pain too profound to be directly expressed, too raw to be carelessly touched. Veronica understood that intimately, the echoing ache of unspoken grief. "I'm a mechanic at Jensen's auto shop," he continued, filling the quiet with simple facts. "Do carpentry on the side, furniture mostly." "Is that what you made?" Veronica gestured to the newspaper-wrapped box now sitting on the counter. Rosie, eager to show off her father's creation, carefully unwrapped the gift, peeling back the layers of newsprint and untying the slightly frayed red ribbon. Beneath the humble wrapping, a wooden box emerged, crafted from richly toned cherry wood. Its dovetailed joints fit with perfect precision, a testament to skill, and a delicate pattern of leaves and vines was intricately carved into its lid. The interior was lined with soft, blue velvet, with small compartments of varying sizes. It was beautiful, Veronica thought. Not flashy or ostentatious, not expensive in the way she understood value, but made with an undeniable care and love that was visible in every single detail, every smooth curve and polished surface. "Lucas, this is extraordinary," Veronica said, her throat tight with unaccustomed emotion. "Really?" Rosie asked, her eyes wide, sensing the depth of Veronica's reaction. "Yours has the most flowers. Daddy said you needed something pretty. Veronica met Lucas's eyes across the gleaming marble. His gaze was steady, gentle. That was very thoughtful. You always look like you're carrying the weight of the world, Lucas said quietly. His voice so soft it was almost lost in the hum of the refrigerator. I thought maybe you could use something that was just nice. No purpose except to be nice. The observation, delivered with such unexpected intimacy and gentle understanding, struck Veronica with the force of a physical blow. She felt something profound crack open inside her chest, a tremor in the carefully constructed walls she had maintained for so long. This man, whom she had never spoken to before this evening, a man from a world so utterly different from her own, had seen her in a way no one else had bothered to. He had looked past the powerful CEO, past the billionaire heiress, and seen the lonely woman beneath. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing with an ease Veronica hadn't known existed. Rosie chattered animatedly about second grade, about her best friend Hannah who could do impressive cartwheels, and about the endless fascinations of a 7-year-old's world. Lucas, in turn, shared stories of his life, how he worked 3 demanding jobs to give Rosie a childhood not defined by loss, how his late wife Rachel had made him promise to keep spreading magic in the world, to keep finding joy even in grief. And Veronica, a woman who had not shared anything truly personal in years, found herself talking. She spoke of her parents' tragic accident, of the raw, consuming grief that had fueled her ambition, driving her to build Hayes Industries from nothing. She spoke of the relentless loneliness that came with immense success, the chilling isolation at the apex of her self-made world. When they finally stood to leave, the hot chocolate mugs long empty, Veronica walked them to her doorway, standing there for a long moment, watching them walk towards their humbler house. Its windows glowed with homemade decorations and warm, inviting lights, a stark contrast to her own darkened facade. Through their windows, she could clearly see a small Christmas tree adorned with paper ornaments, and stockings hung with childlike anticipation over a modest fireplace. It was everything she had told herself she didn't need, everything she had consciously pushed away. But as she gently closed her door, the heavy wood latching with a soft click, Veronica realized something profound had shifted. The silence within her vast home, once a comforting companion, now felt heavier, more oppressive. The pristine, untouched surfaces of her expensive furniture felt colder, starker, and the handcrafted cherrywood jewelry box, now resting on her pristine kitchen island, felt less like a gift and more like a question, one she wasn't sure how to answer, or even if she wanted to. That night, Veronica didn't fall asleep thinking about market fluctuations, about strategic acquisitions, or about the impending quarterly reports. Instead, her thoughts drifted to a little girl's gap-toothed smile, to the image of hands that built beauty from raw wood instead of merely managing financial portfolios, to the terrifying, exhilarating thought of what it might feel like to actually let someone in, to truly connect. The weeks that followed settled into an unexpected, yet deeply comforting rhythm. Veronica found herself, to her own astonishment, at Lucas and Rosie's house more often than her own. She quickly learned Lucas's demanding schedule: early mornings at the auto shop, afternoons devoted to his carpentry projects, and evenings given entirely to Rosie. A steadfast devotion that deeply impressed her. She began timing her arrivals home to coincide with theirs, her initial polite waves slowly transforming into brief conversations on the porch, which, in turn, blossomed into impromptu dinner invitations. Lucas, she discovered, was an excellent cook, capable of conjuring magic from the simplest ingredients. He would often apologize for what he called his humble meal: spaghetti with rich homemade sauce, perfectly roasted chicken with rice. But Veronica found these meals infinitely more satisfying than any 5-star restaurant experience she had ever known. Perhaps it was the genuine warmth of the company, or perhaps it was the undeniable taste of love and care she could detect in every single bite. Veronica started contributing to their larder, groceries mysteriously appearing on their doorstep with carefully written notes claiming she had simply bought too much. She left gift cards to bookstores for Rosie, knowing the child's love for reading, and new woodworking tools for Lucas, insisting they were just sitting unused in her vast garage. Rosie, with the charming adaptability of a child, had taken to calling her Miss V, a nickname that made Veronica's heart squeeze with an unaccustomed warmth every single time she heard it. The little girl would run to greet her with unself-conscious hugs, her small arms wrapping tightly around Veronica's waist. Rosie would drag her to see new drawings, to help with homework, and to meticulously judge imaginary competitions between her vast array of stuffed animals competitions. Veronica, to her surprise, learned to take very seriously indeed, and Lucas was becoming something she couldn't quite define, but felt more intensely, more essentially, with each passing day. Their conversations deepened, moving effortlessly from superficial pleasantries to genuine, vulnerable discussions about dreams deferred, about mistakes made, about the quiet fears that kept them both awake in the solitary hours of the night. They would talk long after Rosie had gone to bed, sitting at Lucas's small kitchen table, mugs of coffee growing cold between them, and Veronica would find herself noticing things she had no business noticing, details that tugged at the edges of her carefully guarded composure. The gentle way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, a genuine, unforced expression. The quiet strength evident in his hands as he gestured while speaking, the deep, steady presence that emanated from him like an unspoken promise of unwavering support. She was falling for him. The realization came gradually, a slow dawning, and then, all at once, during a moment so utterly ordinary, so devoid of grand drama, that it shouldn't have mattered at all. They were in his garage, a wonderfully cluttered space filled with the ordered chaos of tools, wood shaving, and works in progress. Lucas was showing her a rocking chair he was meticulously building for an elderly neighbor, his hands moving over the unfinished wood with such tenderness, explaining the nuances of the grain and how to work with it, how to coax its beauty into being. This is what love looks like, Veronica thought. A profound, almost shattering revelation. Not grand gestures or exorbitantly expensive gifts, not the polished perfection she had always equated with success, but hands that lovingly created beauty from raw materials, hands that built things meant to endure, meant to last. "You're staring," Lucas said, glancing up, an amused, gentle smile playing on his lips. "Sorry," Veronica replied, though she wasn't sorry at all. "I'm just impressed. You have real talent." Lucas, though pleased by the compliment, dismissed it humbly. "It's just carpentry." "It's more than that," Veronica insisted, moving closer, her own hand reaching out to run along the smooth arm of the developing rocking chair, feeling the warmth of the wood. "You put so much care into everything you make." Lucas set down his sandpaper, turning fully to face her. They were standing close now, close enough that she could clearly see the tiny flecks of gold within his warm brown eyes, a detail she had not previously noticed. "I learned a long time ago that if you're going to do something, do it with your whole heart," Lucas said, his voice soft but resonant. "Otherwise, what's the point? Is that how you live your life?" Veronica asked quietly, her own voice barely a whisper. "Whole heart, all in, it's the only way I know how," Lucas replied, his voice dropping even lower, creating an intimate space just for their words, even when it's scary, even when you know you might lose everything again. They were talking about far more than just carpentry now, about much more than the simple act of building, and they both knew it. Lucas reached up slowly, deliberately, giving her every opportunity to pull away if she wished. His fingers gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, his touch light, lingering, a feather-soft caress against her skin. "Veronica," he said, her name a soft question, a hesitant hope, and a palpable fear, all wrapped together in a single breath. "I'm scared," she admitted, The words barely a whisper, a stark, raw admission from a woman who had spent a lifetime perfecting her composure. "Me, too," Lucas confessed, his thumb brushing lightly against her cheek. A comforting rhythm. "But I think I'd be more scared of not trying, of letting this pass by, letting this opportunity slip away because we were too afraid of what might happen, too afraid of the unknown." Veronica wasn't sure who moved first. Perhaps they both did, drawn by an irresistible, magnetic force. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question being asked and answered in the very same breath, a tender exploration of newly discovered desire. Lucas's hand cupped her face with such profound tenderness it made Veronica's chest ache with a sweet, unfamiliar pain. And when Veronica's fingers instinctively curled into his shirt, holding on, clinging to him, she felt something break open inside her that had been locked away, carefully protected, for far too long. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing unsteadily, their foreheads rested against each other. "Well," Lucas said, a soft smile in his voice, a hint of wonder. "That happened." Veronica laughed, the sound shaky but undeniably genuine, a release of tension and newfound joy. "It did. Do you regret it?" She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, her gaze searching, vulnerable. Not even a little bit. They took things slow after that, moving with a careful, deliberate pace, ever mindful of Rosie and the delicate nature of introducing new dynamics into a child's life. Lucas talked to his daughter with gentle honesty, making sure she understood that his feelings for Veronica did not diminish his profound love for her late mother, Rachel, and that it was entirely possible to honor the past while still bravely reaching for the future. Rosie, with the remarkable adaptability and innate wisdom that children sometimes possess, seemed to understand perfectly. "Does this mean Miss V is your girlfriend?" she asked one evening at dinner, her bright, curious eyes flitting between them, a delightful innocence in her direct question. Lucas glanced at Veronica, a question in his own expression, seeking her lead. She nodded, feeling a warm flush spread across her cheeks. A pleasant, unfamiliar sensation. "If that's okay with you," Lucas said to his daughter, his voice gentle and reassuring. Rosie considered this seriously for a long moment. Then, with a sudden burst of joyful understanding, broke into a wide, gap-toothed grin. "Can she come to my school play next week? Hannah's mom is bringing her whole family, and I want to have a big family, too." Veronica felt an unexpected prick of tears in her eyes, a wave of profound emotion washing over her. A family, when had she stopped thinking of herself as someone who could actually have that? Who could belong to such a vibrant, messy, beautiful unit? "I'd be honored," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. And so, their lives began, slowly but surely, to weave together into a rich, complex tapestry. Veronica attended the school play, a delightfully chaotic production where Rosie played an enthusiastic pirate with boundless energy and clapped louder than anyone in the audience. She started keeping extra clothes at Lucas's house for those evenings that seamlessly turned into sleepovers on the comfortable, slightly sagging couch, after Rosie, with artful persuasion, begged her to stay. Veronica learned, with surprising ease, to braid Rosie's hair into intricate patterns, to patiently check homework assignments, and to read bedtime stories with all the proper, dramatic voices, much to Rosie's delight. Lucas, in turn, became her steadfast anchor, her unwavering support. On those particularly bad days at work, when the crushing pressure of her corporate world felt unbearable, she would come home to find him waiting patiently on her porch, holding a bag of takeout and offering a listening ear. His presence a comforting balm. He would simply hold her while she vented, never attempting to fix her problems, never offering unsolicited advice, but simply being present, a steady, calm force in her tumultuous life. He gently reminded her that she was more than her job, more than her immense success, more than the intricate web of her professional achievements. For 3 blissful months, Veronica allowed herself to truly believe that this newfound happiness could actually last, to believe that she had finally found something the universe, in its relentless taking, would not snatch away from her. She should have known better, she thought later, a bitter, cynical whisper in her mind. The photographer caught them quite unexpectedly at the park on a beautiful Saturday afternoon in early March. It had been one of those perfect, rare spring days, the air crisp and clean, the sun warm on their faces. Rosie, with her usual infectious enthusiasm, had begged to go to the playground, so they had packed a simple picnic sandwiches, fresh fruit, and cookies Veronica had, to her own surprise, finally learned to bake without burning. Veronica spent the entire afternoon watching Rosie swing higher and higher, her laughter echoing through the park, and climbing with the fearless agility of a young child. Veronica had been happily pushing Rosie on the swings, laughing as the little girl shrieked with pure delight, yelling higher, higher when she felt Lucas's hand gently slip into hers. It was such a simple, unadorned gesture, his fingers intertwining with hers, but it made her heart stumble, a joyous, irregular beat in her chest. She had turned to smile at him, a wide, genuine smile, and he had leaned in to kiss her temple, a gentle, sweet caress, so full of unspoken affection. She had not seen the camera, had not even noticed the man with the long, intrusive lens positioned covertly across the park, a silent, predatory presence. It wasn't until Monday morning, when her assistant, Patricia, knocked on her office door with an expression of barely contained panic, that Veronica truly understood what had happened, what devastating blow was about to strike. "You need to see this," Patricia said, her voice hushed, laying her tablet on the desk with careful, deliberate movements. The headline screamed across the gossip site's homepage. A brazen, accusatory declaration, Ice Queen thaws Hayes, industry CEO, spotted with blue-collar boyfriend and his daughter. Below the inflammatory headline, a series of damning photographs filled the screen, Veronica and Lucas holding hands, Lucas gently kissing her temple, the 3 of them looking, for all the world, like a happy, unself-conscious family as they shared their picnic. The accompanying article was even worse than the photos. A venomous cascade of barely veiled judgment about the unlikely pairing between a billionaire CEO and a struggling mechanic. It indulged in cruel speculation about whether Veronica was merely slumming it for a thrill, or if Lucas was nothing more than a calculating gold digger. It offered harsh, dismissive commentary about whether Veronica was desperately attempting to play house because she had been too singularly focused on her career to build her own family. A cruel twist of the knife in her most vulnerable wound. A cold, dread-inducing sensation spread through Veronica's veins, chilling her to the bone. This was precisely what she had been afraid of. Not the judgment itself, which she had faced countless times in her career, but the inevitable, devastating impact it would have on Lucas and Rosie, the innocent people she had come to love. "The board is meeting in an hour," Patricia said quietly, her voice still laced with panic. "They're concerned about the company's image, about the negative publicity." The emergency board meeting was exactly as brutal, as unforgiving, as Veronica had anticipated. The board members, a phalanx of men in expensive suits, men who had never in their privileged lives had to choose between personal happiness and professional success, showed her more articles that had cropped up overnight, spreading like a virulent infection across various publications. The social platforms, they informed her, were having an absolute field day with the sensational story, amplifying every cruel comment and lurid speculation. "This is a distraction the company doesn't need," Harold Winters said, his voice clipped and authoritative. He was the eldest board member, a man of old money and even older, more rigid values. "Our investors demand stability. Miss Hayes, not tabloid fodder. This kind of personal melodrama is unacceptable. My personal life has nothing to do with my ability to run this company," Veronica stated, her voice remarkably level, despite the surging fury within her. Except it does. Miss Hayes, when it becomes public knowledge, when it affects our perception in the market. Margaret Chen, the chief financial officer, interjected, at least having the decency to look slightly apologetic as she spoke. The stock price dropped 2 points this morning. Another board member chimed in, his tone accusatory. Because I was photographed at a park with someone I care about, Veronica retorted, her voice rising slightly, incredulous. Because you're involved with someone whose financial situation could be seen as a liability, Harold cut in, his eyes cold and unwavering. What happens when he starts making demands, when he expects you to bankroll his lifestyle? Miss Hayes, these are legitimate concerns. Lucas would never. Veronica started, fury finally rising, threatening to break her carefully maintained composure. You don't know that. You barely know him. Harold leaned forward, his expression severe. 6 months ago, you had never even spoken to this man. Now you're playing stepmother to his child. It reflects poorly on the company. Veronica, it shows a distinct lack of judgment. The argument spiraled, going in frustrated circles for a grueling hour. Finally, Harold, with a chilling finality, laid down what was clearly an ultimatum. We are not asking you to end the relationship, Miss Hayes, but we are asking you to be more discreet. No more public outings, no more tabloid headlines. Keep your personal life private and separate from the company, or step down and let someone with better judgment take over the reins. Step down from the company she had painstakingly built with her own 2 hands, the company into which she had poured 2 decades of her life. Every waking hour, every ounce of her prodigious intellect and fierce determination. Hayes Industries, which had been the only constant, the only unwavering certainty in a world that seemed intent on taking everything else away from her. They were asking her to make an impossible choice: her career, her life's work, or her heart, her newfound relationship. Veronica left the meeting without giving them an answer, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, her heart heavy with dread. The house that had once felt like a sanctuary, a safe haven from the chaos of the world, now felt like a cold, empty tomb, its pristine surfaces mirroring the void within her. She sat once again at her vast, empty dining table, trying, desperately, to figure out what she was supposed to do, how she was supposed to navigate this cruel, impossible dilemma. The knock came just after sunset, a gentle, familiar sound, and she knew, even before opening the door, that it would be Lucas. He stood on her porch, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his expression guarded in a way she had never seen before, a subtle shield over his usual openness. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly, his voice laced with an uncharacteristic diffidence. She stepped aside, allowing him entry. He looked around at the pristine, almost sterile surfaces of her living room, and Veronica saw him seeing, truly seeing, the immense distance between their 2 worlds, a chasm that had never seemed so wide, so unbridgeable, before this moment. "I saw the articles," Lucas said, his voice flat, devoid of its usual warmth. "Rosie's teacher mentioned them. Some of the other parents were talking." "Lucas, I'm so sorry." Veronica heard the words tumble out, raw with genuine anguish. "I never meant for this to happen, for you and Rosie to be dragged into this ugliness." "I know," he replied, running a hand through his hair, his movement slow, weary. He looked tired in a way that went deeper than mere physical exhaustion, a profound weariness of the soul. "But Veronica, they're saying terrible things about me, about my daughter. One article even implied I was neglecting Rosie by letting her get close to you. That's ridiculous. Anyone who knows you, but they don't know me." Lucas interrupted, his voice rising slightly, a flash of frustration, before he caught himself, reining in his emotions. "That's the problem. To the rest of the world, I'm just some guy trying to punch above his weight. A gold digger, and Rosie, she's just a prop in some sensationalized story about you, a convenient accessory. She's 7 years old. Veronica. She shouldn't have to deal with strangers picking apart her life, dissecting her very existence. So what? Veronica shot back, the desperation in her own voice stark and palpable. We just give up. We let them win. It's not that simple, Lucas said, his voice softer, but his conviction unwavering. He finally met her eyes, and the pain she saw there, a deep, raw anguish, nearly broke her heart. Everything I do, every single choice I make, I have to think about Rosie first. That's what being a parent means. Veronica, and right now, being with you means putting her in the spotlight in ways that could hurt her deeply, in ways she's too young to understand or defend against. How can I possibly choose that for her? How can you not? Veronica countered, her voice sharp with a mix of fear and indignation. Are you really going to let fear make this decision for us? Let other people's ignorant judgment determine whether we get to be happy, whether we get to build a life together. It's not about my happiness. Veronica, Lucas said quietly, his gaze steady, resolute. It stopped being about that the moment I became a father. My wants, my needs, they come second to hers, always. And what about what she wants? Veronica pressed, her voice pleading. Rosie loves having me around. She loves our family. She's 7. Veronica, Lucas replied, his voice heavy with a profound sadness. She doesn't understand what this means, how much worse it could get. What happens when she gets bullied at school, when other parents whisper about us in the grocery store? When she eventually looks up your name and finds articles calling her father a gold digger, a user. He took a shaky, ragged breath, the weight of his fear evident. I can't protect her from everything, but I can protect her from this kind of public scrutiny and cruelty. The silence that followed was crushing, suffocating in its intensity. This was the choice. Then, the agonizing, life-altering decision she had been running from her entire adult life. Choose to love and risk losing everything, risking the painful vulnerability of connection, or close herself off again, retreat into the familiar, sterile safety of solitude. But she had spent 27 years playing it safe, 27 years meticulously choosing security over connection, corporate success over personal vulnerability, building impenetrable walls instead of opening inviting windows. And what, ultimately, had it gotten her a beautiful, opulent house she hated coming home to? Christmas Eves spent in lonely, echoing silence, wondering what the purpose of any of it was if there was truly no one to share it with, no one to truly see her. No, she said finally. The single word, quiet, but firm, resolute, emerging from a place of deep, undeniable conviction. Lucas blinked, surprised, almost disbelieving. What number? Veronica repeated, louder this time, her voice gaining strength, steel entering its tone. I'm not doing this. I'm not letting fear make this decision for us. I'm not walking away from you and Rosie because the world has opinions about us. And I'm not letting you walk away either. Oh, Veronica. Listen to me, Lucas pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation, attempting one last time to pull her back to what he perceived as rational safety. She moved closer to him, taking his calloused hands in hers, her grip firm, unwavering. You're right that Rosie has to come first, Lucas. You're absolutely right about that. But do you know what I think would hurt her more than anything else? Growing up watching her father give up on happiness because he was too scared to fight for it? Learning that love is something you run from instead of courageously running toward. Being taught that what other people think matters more than what we truly feel, more than the genuine connections we make. It's not that simple. Veronica, Lucas argued, but there was less certainty in his voice now, a subtle crack in his conviction. Yes, it is, Veronica insisted, squeezing his hands, drawing strength from his physical presence. It's terrifying and messy, and might very well blow up in our faces. But Lucas, I have spent my entire adult life playing it safe. building impenetrable walls, meticulously convincing myself I didn't need anyone because needing people meant they could leave, could die, could hurt me in ways I might not survive. And it worked. I survived. But I wasn't living. I was merely existing in a gilded cage. "What are you saying?" Lucas asked, his voice barely a whisper, a mix of hope and disbelief. "I'm saying I love you." The words burst forth, fierce, definite, undeniable, a profound declaration that echoed in the silent room. "I love you and I love Rosie, and I'm not going to let a bunch of anonymous strangers with internet access take that away from me. From us. I'm afraid of going back to the way things were before you knocked on my door that Christmas Eve. I'm afraid of waking up 20 years from now and realizing I let the best thing that ever happened to me walk away because I was too scared to fight for it." Lucas was staring at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears, a profound wonder in their depths. "You love me, yes, you idiot." Veronica laughed, the sound watery but unmistakably genuine, a release of pure, unbridled emotion. "I love you. I love the way you make breakfast for Rosie, even when you're utterly exhausted from your 3 jobs. I love how you build things with your hands, imbued with such care, and put your whole heart into every single piece you create. I love that you kept your sacred promise to your late wife, Rachel, even when it must have been impossibly hard to do so. I love that you see me not the CEO, not the public success story, just me, and somehow think I'm worth your precious time, worth your love." Veronica. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer, a whispered promise, a profound acceptance. "So, here's what I'm going to do," she continued, her voice firm, resolute. "Tomorrow, I'm calling a press conference. I'm going to tell them exactly who you are. Lucas, not some grotesque caricature they've created for their own entertainment, but the real you. A man who works 3 jobs to give his daughter a good life. A man who tirelessly builds furniture for neighbors who can't afford to buy new. A man who gives thoughtful Christmas gifts to lonely strangers because his late wife made him promise to keep spreading magic in the world, to keep that light alive." She took a deep, fortifying breath. "And I'm going to tell them that yes, I'm deeply in love with you, and that anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. What about your board? Your company?" Veronica. Lucas interjected, his voice still hesitant, still concerned. "I'll handle them," she replied, her voice imbued with a quiet, fierce confidence. And she would. "I'm not giving you up, Lucas. Not for them, not for anyone." She faltered then, suddenly uncertain, a flicker of doubt crossing her resolute expression. Unless you don't want this anymore. If you really think we should end things, if you truly believe that's what's best for Rosie, then I'll respect that. But don't make that decision out of fear. Make it because it's actually what you want, what your heart truly desires." Lucas stood frozen for a long, silent moment, the battle within him raging, his expression a complex tapestry of fear, hope, and an overwhelming love. Then, finally, he moved. His calloused hands came up to frame her face, gentle despite their rough texture, and when he kissed her, it tasted like the salt of unspoken tears, the intoxicating sweetness of hope, and the glorious, terrifying promise of second chances. "I don't want to end this," he whispered against her lips, his voice raw with emotion. "God, Veronica, I don't want to end this. I'm just so scared of getting it wrong, of somehow failing Rosie, of hurting her." "You're not failing her." Veronica pulled back just enough to meet his tear-filled eyes, her gaze unwavering. "Strong. You're showing her what it looks like to be brave, to choose love, even when it's incredibly hard, even when the world tries to tear you down. That's the best gift you could possibly give her." "Lucas, what if it gets worse?" he asked, his voice still laced with a lingering fear. "Then we'll deal with it together." She emphasized the last word, infusing it with all the strength and certainty she possessed. "You don't have to do this alone anymore. Lucas, that's what this means. Whatever comes our way, whatever challenges we face, We face it as a team. We face it as a family. She felt the precise moment he surrendered. The profound tension draining from his broad shoulders as he pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I love you, too," Lucas said, his voice muffled against her, in case that wasn't abundantly clear. "I love you so much it terrifies me." Veronica smiled, feeling tears finally spill over, tracing warm paths down her cheeks. "Good. That's how I want you, terrified. And here, with me." 3 days later, the press conference made national news, its impact reverberating far beyond the corporate world. Veronica stood at a podium in Hayes Industries' main conference room, facing a sea of reporters, their cameras flashing, creating a blinding, chaotic symphony of light. She refused to let her hands shake, her posture radiating an unwavering confidence. "I've spent most of my adult life trying to be perfect," she began, her voice clear and resonant, filling the expansive room. "A perfect chief executive officer, a perfect public image, perfect control over every single aspect of my existence, and I was very good at it. Good enough to build a company worth billions, to earn respect in an industry that doesn't give it easily. But perfection is a lonely way to live. It means never letting anyone see the parts of you that aren't polished, aren't perfectly presented, never admitting you might need something you can't provide for yourself." She paused, allowing her words to settle, to sink into the consciousness of the assembled journalists. Then Lucas Bennett knocked on my door on Christmas Eve with his daughter and a handmade gift. And everything I thought I knew about strength got challenged, because real strength isn't refusing to need anyone. It's admitting you do, and bravely choosing to be vulnerable anyway. It's a single father working 3 demanding jobs to give his child a good life, while still finding time to give thoughtful gifts to lonely neighbors. It's a 7-year-old girl who can look at a stranger and see someone who needs kindness. It's choosing to love after profound loss, to hope after devastating heartbreak. The room was silent now, every reporter leaning forward, rapt, captivated by her raw honesty. "So, yes, I'm in a relationship with Lucas Bennett. He's a mechanic and a carpenter, a widower, and a devoted single father. And, quite simply, the best man I've ever met. No, he's not wealthy or famous, not by society's standards. What he is, however, is kind, hard-working, incredibly devoted to his daughter in ways that inspire me every single day to be better than I was. And I love him." Questions erupted, a cacophony of voices, but Veronica held up a firm hand, silencing the clamor. "I'm not here to debate the validity of my relationship or justify my choices to people who don't know me, who have no right to judge. I'm here to draw a clear line. My personal life is not public property. Lucas and his daughter are not characters in a sensationalized story for your entertainment. They're real people who deserve privacy and respect." "Miss Hayes, what about concerns that your relationship represents a conflict of interest for Hayes Industries?" A reporter in the front row stood up, his voice sharp, challenging. "There is no conflict of interest," Veronica said firmly, her voice unwavering. "Lucas has no involvement in my company, no financial stake in its success, and no interest in anything except building a life with me." "What about the board's concerns?" Veronica allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile, a hint of steel in her eyes. "The board works for me, not the other way around. I founded Hayes Industries. I built it from the ground up, with my own vision and my own hands, and I will continue leading it while also having a personal life, because I'm a human being, not a corporate robot. If the board can't accept that, they're welcome to find other employment." She fielded a few more questions, calmly and decisively, before ending the conference and walking out. Her head held high, radiating an undeniable power. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Lucas. "We watched," Rosie says. "You were braver than any superhero." "I agree. Love you." The fallout from the press conference was intense, as predicted, but ultimately manageable. The various social platforms exploded with myriad takes and opinions, both supportive and critical. Think pieces appeared in major publications, dissecting Veronica's statements and her newfound vulnerability. And yes, the stock price took another hit. A brief but noticeable dip in value. But it stabilized after a week, finding its new equilibrium. And when the quarterly earnings came in, stronger than projected, even Harold Winters had to grudgingly admit that her personal life, far from destroying the company, had not significantly impacted its performance. More importantly, the frenzied media circus eventually died down. The relentless gaze of the public moving on to other, newer, more sensational stories. Lucas and Rosie learned, with resilience and grace, to navigate the occasional photographer, to politely decline interviews, to protect their private moments. And Veronica learned, perhaps the hardest lesson of all, to set firm boundaries with her work, leaving her office at reasonable hours, taking entire weekends off, remembering that a rich, fulfilling life existed outside the confines of conference rooms and quarterly reports. It wasn't perfect. Of course, there were still hard days, still challenges to face, still moments of doubt, but they worked through it all together, learning to communicate openly, to trust implicitly that what they had built, what they shared, was stronger than whatever outside forces tried to tear it apart. The following Christmas Eve, precisely 1 year after Lucas and Rosie had first knocked on her door, Veronica stood in their kitchen now, a space filled with warmth and life since Lucas and Rosie had officially moved in 3 months prior. She watched the gentle fall of snow outside, flakes drifting softly to the ground, while the intoxicating scent of cookies filled the air. Real cookies this time, made from Rachel's beloved late wife's recipe. The house looked wonderfully different, transformed, where once there had been only pristine, untouched surfaces. Now there were Rosie's vibrant drawings proudly displayed on the refrigerator, Lucas's tools neatly organized in the converted garage workshop, and countless family photos scattered everywhere, each capturing a cherished memory. The vast dining table, once a symbol of her solitude, now regularly hosted friends and neighbors, its surface worn with the marks of shared meals and laughter. The profound silence that had once defined her home had been joyously replaced with the comfortable sounds of people actually living, of laughter, of music, of everyday, messy, beautiful life. Miss V. Rosie came running into the kitchen, wearing her new holiday dress, her eyes bright with excitement. "Can I answer the door when people arrive?" "Of course, sweetheart." Veronica bent to kiss the top of her head, marveling at how natural, how utterly automatic the gesture had become. Lucas appeared in the doorway, looking handsome in the deep green sweater she had bought him. When he smiled at her, a gentle, familiar crinkle around his eyes, Veronica felt the same wonderful flutter she had felt that first night, a year ago. "Everything ready?" he asked, sliding his arms around her waist from behind, pulling her close. Almost. Veronica leaned back against him, sighing contentedly. "Are you sure you're okay with this? Having all these people here? This was my idea." "Remember," Lucas pressed a soft kiss to her temple. "You wanted a quiet evening, and I convinced you we should throw a party, a proper Christmas Eve gathering." It was true. Lucas had suggested hosting a Christmas Eve party, inviting neighbors, friends, colleagues from her company, his workshop clients. He had wanted to recreate that profound feeling of community, of belonging, that had driven him to knock on doors a year ago. The doorbell rang, a cheerful chime, and Rosie, with a joyful shout, went racing to answer it. Lucas gently turned Veronica in his arms, his gaze tender, reflective. What she asked, sensing the shift in his mood. "Just thinking about last year," he said, his voice soft. "How different everything was, how scared we both were. And now I'm still scared," Lucas admitted, a crooked smile playing on his lips. "Scared I'll wake up and find out this was all a dream. Scared I don't deserve to be this happy." Veronica silenced him with a kiss, a deep, loving affirmation. "We deserve this, all of it." The happiness, the fear, the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of building a life together. We deserve it. Lucas. Yeah, he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. I'm starting to believe that. As the evening unfolded, Veronica moved through rooms humming with life and conversation and laughter. She helped serve food, refilled drinks, made introductions between people from different parts of their lives, and marveled at how utterly natural, how completely comfortable it all felt. This was community, she realized. Not transactional networking or strategic alliances, but real, genuine connection between people who genuinely cared about each other. Later, after most guests had happily departed, they gathered around the fireplace, its flames casting warm, dancing shadows on the walls. Rosie, tired but radiant with happiness, curled up contentedly between them, her head resting on Lucas's lap. Someone played guitar, soft, melodic chords filling the air, and everyone sang carols, their voices blending in joyful harmony. Veronica found herself joining in, her voice, once so guarded, blending freely with Lucas's warm baritone and Rosie's enthusiastic, slightly off-key contribution. When midnight approached, its chimes echoing softly, and the last few guests departed, the three of them stood on the porch, watching the gentle snow fall on a street sparkling with myriad Christmas lights. Rosie was half asleep, nestled securely on Lucas's hip, and Veronica stood close enough that their shoulders touched, a comforting, familiar warmth. "Merry Christmas," Lucas said softly, his voice filled with a profound contentment. "Merry Christmas," Veronica echoed, her voice equally soft, and meant it. Truly meant it, in a way she never had before in her entire life. They headed inside, their footsteps quiet, to gently put Rosie to bed, tucking her in with whispered goodnights and tender kisses. Tomorrow, they would clean up, return to their routines, face whatever the new year would bring with its inevitable challenges. But tonight, this precious, perfect night, was enough. Later, in their own bed, Lucas pulled her close, his arms wrapping securely around her. "Thank you," he murmured into her hair, for what Veronica asked, her voice sleepy, content. "For opening the door that first night," Lucas replied, his voice soft, "and every night since, for being brave enough to let us in, to let love into your life." Veronica smiled into the comforting darkness, a deep sense of peace settling over her. "Thank you for knocking, Lucas, for refusing to let me stay locked away in my own solitude, for showing me what I was truly missing, what was possible." "We're good together," Lucas said, his voice firm, confident. "We're better than good," Veronica corrected, her voice filled with quiet certainty. "We're real," as she drifted off to sleep, surrounded by the tangible evidence of their beautifully blended life. Veronica thought about the woman she had been just 1 year ago. Successful, yes, unimaginably wealthy, but utterly, profoundly lonely. Convinced that the safest way to live was to never risk caring too much, never risking the vulnerability of connection. That woman had been waiting alone on Christmas Eve when a single father and his spirited daughter had knocked with a handmade gift, and in accepting that gift, in bravely choosing to open her door and, more importantly, her heart, she had discovered what she had been missing all along: a family. Not the one she had tragically lost, not the one she had fiercely guarded herself against, but one she had chosen, one she had fought for, one she had meticulously built from the ground up, brick by brick, with trust and courage and an unyielding love. The true gift Lucas had brought that night wasn't merely a cherrywood jewelry box. The real gift had been the profound possibility of connection, of love, of a life that was wonderfully messy and beautifully complicated, and absolutely, undeniably worth every single risk. He had given her hope when she had long forgotten how to hope, companionship when she had convinced herself solitude was her greatest strength, and a family when she had stopped believing such things were ever meant for her. They had both been scared, terrified even, of taking this immense chance, of embracing this fragile, unpredictable love, but they had done it anyway, bravely stepping into the unknown. And that courage, that audacious choice, had transformed everything. The chief executive officer, who had waited alone every Christmas Eve for so many years, had finally found her family. The single father had found a loving partner, a steadfast companion for life's journey, and the little girl, Rosie, had found the extended, warm, messy family she had always wished for. Her dreams made real, and on this Christmas Eve, 1 year later, none of them were alone. The beautifully crafted jewelry box Lucas had made still sat on Veronica's dresser, still beautiful, still treasured. But it was no longer the most precious gift she possessed. The most precious gift. She understood now. Couldn't be held in your hands, couldn't be bought with money, couldn't be contained in any material object. It lived instead in precious moments like these, in the daily, conscious choice of love over fear, in the brave act of opening doors instead of painstakingly building walls, in having the profound courage to believe you deserved happiness, even after suffering unimaginable loss. That was the real gift. That was the magic, not in perfect, flawless moments or storybook fairy tale endings, but in the beautiful, messy, unpredictable reality of building a life together, brick by brick, moment by moment. It resided in being brave enough to knock on closed doors and generous enough to, finally, open them. Veronica had taken that terrifying, exhilarating risk, and while the future, like all futures, remained uncertain, she knew one thing with absolute, unwavering certainty. She would never regret opening her door that Christmas Eve. She would never regret choosing love over loneliness, vulnerability over sterile safety, a full, messy, complicated life over an empty, perfect one. The woman who had waited alone every Christmas had finally found what she had been waiting for. And it turned out the answer had been right next door all along, wrapped humbly in newspaper and carried by hands that built beautiful, lasting things, just waiting for her to find the courage to knock, and then to open.